Authority. Roll call, please.
Member Bennett.
Here.
Member Brindle.
Here.
Member Sprague.
Here.
Member Swenson.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. We have in front of us this evening a revised agenda that added an item 4P to the end of the consent agenda at section Roman 4. Do we have anyone on the council? Oh, excuse me. We did the roll call. Approval of the meeting agenda with the revised agenda. We have approval on that. Thank you. Got a motion and a second to approve the revised agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Got ahead of myself there. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Member Bennett.
Yes, I'd like to remove 4G, please.
G as in girl?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll move the rest of the agenda.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda with the exception of 4G. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And now on to 4G, which is the bid on the lighting concepts for the France Avenue project. Member Bennett.
Yes, thank you. In a discussion last week, you referenced the desire or desirability of seeing a design for this. And a complete design, the streetscape, the urban design, has not come forward. We've had some bids come forward for it, but they have not been accompanied by depictions except for this one. And I was a part of some of those meetings, and I know, Mayor, you were as well, but didn't get to attend the last ones, and so was not familiar previously with what was being recommended. I'd like to be able to see how the elements fit together. I understand that some of them are being installed, but and know that there was a recommendation of some fairly modern lighting design at one point. But again, what didn't see the conclusion of it and the agreement as to how the depiction as to how everything was going to fit together. So that is the reason for my removal is that I would like to see it action deferred on this one more meeting and be able to see the elements of the design.
Director Milner, would you comment on that in light of the fact that some of these they've been purchased and are, as I understand it, potentially being installed, at least according to Member Bennett? Deferring it, is that an issue?
It is not an issue, Mayor and members of the council. The lighting for the France Avenue, nothing's been ordered yet. We do have concerns with any light pole, specifically these designs on if we delay it 2 weeks. It's going to be 2 weeks later in the installation process, but they could still go forward with the installation of conduits and foundations, so we could bring the overall design of the landscaping and lighting back.
You have pictures of the lighting. We just don't have pictures of the landscaping. So is the worry that the lighting and the landscaping isn't really going to fit together? Because I'm okay with this lighting. So pen is in the air, Manager Neal.
I think as Director Milner said, it doesn't, 2 additional weeks doesn't kill this bid, right, Chad? So, but I think it would be important to know that even if you had 2 more weeks, and we should show you what that looks like. I have no problem doing that. If you were to make changes in this, we would have to start all over with the bid process, and we would have to rebid the lighting at this point.
Again, what my request is at this point is to see how the elements fit together, because I wasn't able to, because of time demands. I believe that one of the meetings was held while I was in Washington, D.C. with the other members of the council, so was not able to see the design as it was drawing near to its conclusion. So I haven't personally seen it, nor has it been presented to the council. And the mayor actually had commented on it last week. So I think it would be worthwhile for us all to see how the elements are going to fit together.
Okay.
I would be comfortable seeing with all the elements fit together. I'm actually not comfortable delaying this 2 weeks with installation later. So while I appreciate your request, I would make a motion that we approve this expenditure with the expectation that we see a complete presentation next meeting.
I'll second that.
Right. We will make that happen.
Further discussion?
Yes, just I would like to say in terms of the landscape and the urban design elements, I think we need to bring the visuals back to council before we go further down the road next time. This is a very visual council, and we're visual learners, and we like to see the final product before it goes out the door. So just as a note. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I would comment that there have been a lot of people that looked at this lighting issue. Member Bennett has a legitimate concern. But this lighting is just terrific, I think, and the input that we had from the members of that committee about potentially changing the bulbs depending upon the season to create a different effect. All of this has been accomplished by LHB and Michael Schroeder in particular. Some very distinctive lighting, and I too would like to see how the entire schematic looks, the landscape architecture plan, particularly the medians. I'm concerned about the plantings that go in there, but I'd be prepared to vote in support of adopting this bid this evening for the lighting that's shown that we're bidding on, or that we did ask for bids on, I should say. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of approving 4G, which is the request for purchase, Egan Companies is the low bidder on this lighting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Carried. And we will have the presentation next week regardless.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. All right, we're on to the next portion of the agenda, and that is special recognitions and presentations. And we have first in line tonight the Edina girls hockey recognition. I see the group getting up. We've got an alternate captain, and what else? Another player or captain, another alternate. And we've got, this is a terrific award, so would you please introduce yourselves and all of you, please, and then tell us a little bit about this award. Thank you.
My name is Eric Hendrickson, and I've been involved in the girls hockey program in Edina for the last 12 years as a coach and also serving on the Edina Hockey Board as well.
I'm Bob Pauley. I helped with Eric on the board. I was head of the girls side 1 year with a guy named Nick Olson who couldn't make it here today.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm Eva Hendrickson, and I've been playing in the Edina Girls Hockey Association for 6 years.
I'm Christina, and I've also been playing for about that long.
So they were U14A state runner-up and U14B state champions.
All right,
as
very
well.
good. So, Derek or Bob, you want to talk a little bit about the recognition that took place from the
Sure.
Minnesota District of USA Hockey?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to kind of share the exciting news that USA Hockey recognized the Edina hockey program with its Female Honors Award. So it basically recognizes commitment to girls hockey during the past season. It acknowledges the EHA as a leader in growth, development, and promotion of ice hockey for females in Minnesota and the U.S. We work closely with the USA Hockey models for developing players. And just a couple quick stats for you. Just this past year, we had 21 teams in the girls' side of the program with 316 girls, which puts us by leaps and bounds as the largest girls' hockey program in the nation and in Minnesota as well. So we're excited to continue to promote girls' hockey, and it's been growing each year. The EHA's mission is to really create a fun and fair, safe hockey environment and promoting just as much participation as possible. And I did want to say a special thanks to the City Council for its support of an additional sheet of ice over at Braemar. Yep. I know it's expensive and there's a lot of things going on, but really with the number of players we have on both the boys' side and the girls' side, it's really it's very much in need. So it's we're all very excited about that, and thanks again for your support of that.
Bob, any comment?
No, thank you for everything.
And ladies, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you. Love it.
Go home.
All right, hold on. We'll get a photo while you're here.
Okay.
I'll come down.
I have a 7-year-old granddaughter who's in a summer program on 3-on-3, and she has now been nicknamed, she's Grace Sarm, Trouble. And I can see now in about 10 years, 10 years she's going to be standing up here, and I'm going to wish I was still sitting on City Council. I'm very proud of you guys, so
Thank you.
nice job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, Trouble.
I was going to say I have a daughter nicknamed Trouble, but she doesn't play hockey.
Probably should. Get that in the display case.
Speech, exactly.
Okay.
Next in this portion of the agenda, our communications coordinator, Jordan Gilgenbach, will give us an update on the July Speak Up Edina issue on community discussion on public art. Jordan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Good evening. Tonight, like the Mayor said, I'm going to be presenting the July discussion report for Speak Up Edina on public spending on public art. Communication and civic engagement is one of the City Council's 6 strategic priorities for 2014-2015. As part of that, we're doing a monthly discussion throughout 2014 on Speak Up Edina on various different topics of community interest. In July, again, we did spending on public art, and we asked the following questions. Should permanent public art be purchased? Would you support the city spending public money on art throughout the city? It's currently displayed at various locations throughout the city. Where else should public art be expanded? And if a piece is purchased, how much should the city spend per year, per piece, or some other way? The discussion was open from July 1st to August 1st. A total of 34 comments were made. The site received 645 visitors for a total of 890 visits and a little over 3,000 page views. 40% people came to the site more than once. The majority of the respondents were from Edina. It looks like there was one there from West Bloomington. And about half of, and in the staff report I noted that about half of the actual traffic to the site was from Edina, according to their internet service provider. Quick summary of the comments that are all included in your council packets tonight. People think that, or some of the comments said that they want to involve the community if purchasing with public funds, to possibly seek outside funding, attempt to please as many as possible, and then especially if we do use public funding, to thank the taxpayers for allowing us to use their tax dollars for such a use. Another person said ideally Edina would have an annual art budget like playgrounds, possibly setting aside X percent of dollars of the annual budget or a CIP for art every year. That the city could spend money, or even private entities could spend money on development in the city on things like Promenade Phase 4, private development on things like Pentagon Park or any of the other many projects that are going on in the city. One commenter said that they think that Edina lacks a performing art center, much like cities like Bloomington or Hopkins have, where you can enjoy things like music, theater, dance, and other sorts of performance art. Another comment said that they prefer spending money to showcase, but not to purchase, so that way that the art that's being displayed is always fresh and current. It's never stagnant. Another person also said that there should be a variety of funding, anything from public use to donations through the community fund, private donations, etc. And that, again, more locations could be explored other than just the main ones on the promenade at 50th and France, Granbury Square Park, and City Hall. One person said that the city should support public art, both the hardware and the software. Again, the hardware being the public art itself, the software being the performance arts, just like the other comment said. And it should be incorporated into the city and possibly even incorporated into the school curriculum. More so than what current just plain art programs provide. Again, setting aside a percentage of the city's annual budget or CIP for art, and that many factors need to be considered for the amount per piece, including quality of the piece and the amount of funds raised if money is raised. For August, the discussion is community gardens. That's open until September 1st. We're asking whether or not people want to see more community gardens, where they should be, and if they currently use a community garden. If not, would they? So that's what we're looking for in the August discussion. And with that, I'll stand for questions on this topic.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank
Anyone
you.
have questions on the public art update? So we
And
have
the
our-
next topic?
The next topic was community gardens,
Okay.
Yep.
and that's through September 1st.
And we've got Barbara Lavaleur out here who's running the public art committee for us. Barbara, any comment? Quick comment?
Barbara Lavaleur, 7621 Edinburgh Way, Unit 2110, Edina, 55435. I just want to thank the Communications Department for bringing art to the conversation. I really love the new app where you can vote online and the new ballots that they designed. So I'm just very pleased that we have the support of the Communications Department and the City Council. So I just would ask people to vote for their favorite sculpture as well. And I know that wasn't part of the questions, but I got to put in my plug.
All right, good.
It's only open until the end of September.
All right, thank you, Barbara.
And this is what they look like.
All right, why don't you put them down in the middle of the table there, and we'll have
Sure.
somebody zoom in so they can see them at home. There you go, right there.
Just like that. Perfect.
All right, and they can do that online.
Online on the Edina to Go app, and there are paper ballots in several locations. It's all on the website as well. So you can vote at City Hall, at the Senior Center, at Edinburgh Park, at the Edina Arts Center, and at Centennial Lakes.
All right, good. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jordan. And
that's-
then why don't
and-
you...
I'm sorry, and that's a good point from Barbara too. With the city's new mobile app, Edina to Go, that we recently launched, we're doing a first time ever. We're allowing people to vote from their phone for their favorite public art sculpture. If you haven't already downloaded it, you all should, and go ahead and vote for your favorite piece on there. So.
Good. Well, why don't you transition right into your next presentation, which is the 2014 Images of Edina Photo Contest presentation. We've got 6 winners this year, and you're going to make those presentations.
Yeah, so this was our 11th year doing the photo contest, the Images of Edina Photo Contest. Again, this year we partnered with Edina Magazine to help us facilitate this contest. Anybody who lives, works, or goes to school in Edina was eligible to enter a photo, one photo in each category, each of 5 categories representing the city's vision statement: living for people and plants and wildlife, learning, raising families, and doing business. This year we had a good panel of judges, which included Megan Ghosh from Edina Magazine, Rick Johnson, who's a longtime photography instructor at the Edina Art Center. I think he said 20 or 30 years he's been teaching there, so he really knows his photography. And then Megan Davis, who's a graphic designer here for the city. Photos were submitted and judged on subject matter, composition, clarity, depth of field, lighting, quality, color, artistry, drama, degree of difficulty, and Edina relevance. These photos will be displayed in our finance department for 2 years, and they'll be used potentially in cities' publications or Edina Magazine publications, such as Edina publications such as About Town, Edition Edina, or others. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the winners. Mayor Hovland is here. He's going to stand up front, and we're going to take some photos with the winners. And I've got those all in order there. So the first winner is of the Living People category. It's called My First 70-Degree Day in 8 Months by Julie Pryor Miller. And Julie, if you want to come on up. Just take one more here. Thank you, Julie. Thank you. All right, our next winner tonight is in the Living Plants and Wildlife category. It's called Silky Streams by Timothy, is it Timothy Mocht? Great. You want to come on up? One more here. Thank you.
Thanks for entering the contest.
All right, up next we've got the winner of the learning category, which is John's First Fountain from Jennifer Schmidt.
The hardware in front of you there.
Great, thank you. All right, next winner tonight is in the Raising Families category. It's called Escape by Kate Schmidt. Great, thank you. All right, next photo is in the Doing Business category. The winner here is called Pinstripes Edina by Rachel Kahn.
The name is spelled wrong.
Is it? Was it K-H-N?
It's wrong there too. Congratulations. We'll get this fixed.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Be careful with that base.
Thank you.
The correct spelling afterwards. I should we get it right. That one was destined for replacement. For a lot of reasons.
All right. The next photo here is the Reader's Choice winner. This winner was posted on Edina Magazine's website for 30 days, allowing readers to be able to vote on this winner. So this one's chosen by the readers of Edina Magazine. And this one was a tough race. It won by one vote out of 300 combined votes, which is called Bad Day at the Pond by Robert Schwartzbauer.
Cold shoulder up there. Congratulations, Bob. Bob has served our city well in several capacities, so this is another one of his talents he's sharing with us.
Great, thank you. All right, and last but not least is our Best in Show winner of the night. This winner is chosen by the judges, the best of all the category winners, and that one goes to Silky Streams by Timothy Mocht.
This time the base is hanging together. Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations
Thank you.
again. Make sure you all enter again next year.
Yep. So for our 12th annual photo contest, which will be next spring, details will be in next spring's About Town, about when to enter, where to enter, so on and so forth. So thank you to everybody who entered. We hope that everybody enters again for next year. A lot of great photos this year, making it really hard for the judges. Hopefully we get just as many, if not even more, excellent photos. So thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of the council, congratulations to all the winners, and thanks for caring about participating in this contest. It's another way to accentuate our town and beautify our community, so thank you very much. All right, the next section of our agenda, that completes the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. Next, we're into community comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on an issue that is not otherwise on the agenda this evening? Please come forward, and you'll have 3 minutes, as was mentioned earlier. And you'll have the green light, and then when you've got 30 seconds left, you'll get a yellow light, and that'll be your hint to start to wrap up. And we have an experienced presenter here who will lead the way and show you how it's done. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Frank Lorenz, 7501 York Avenue. In the Star Tribune sometime in the last 5 weeks, there was a brief article that alluded to the work that 2 Edina detectives did in beginning the chain that ferreted out a international identity theft scheme. The article was brief, and probably that's fine, but that's some classy police work, and identity theft is becoming a huge problem. On the one hand, I want to suggest that the city do something to recognize these people. I believe there were 2 of them. But on the other hand, if they set in motion the system that is going to put a number of people in Russia or Mexico or wherever in jail for 40 years, I'm not sure that the recognition should be in public for the safety of these 2 people and their families. So I don't know what you should do, perhaps a private ceremony, but it's likely their efforts, which is the boring, slogging element of police work, probably helped the FBI and the CIA and whoever else was ultimately involved in this, bringing down this group, I don't know, $1 billion of taxpayers' money saved, more or less, who knows. But Edina is not necessarily the place you'd expect this to occur. So these 2 people, I assume it's 2, but these people really did work above and beyond. And without endangering their lives, I'd like to ask that you do something. That's a fairly ambiguous statement, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But
all right. Thank you, Mr. Lorenz. It's a nice suggestion. And thanks for coming up as a private citizen to express your appreciation to them. Ma'am, come on up.
Actually have a letter.
You can give it.
You can have it, hand it to the... Do you want to use the overhead for your presentation? Okay. And the clerk will circulate your letter to us, and we'll put it in as part of the record for this evening. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor, council members, my name is Christian Clapp, and I reside at 5844 Oak Lawn Avenue, Edina, Minnesota. I come before you tonight because of a concern I have over Pamela Park. My concern is that there was lack of adequate notice and accordingly lack of due process notice with respect to the proposed changes that are being made to Pamela Park. And particularly, there was a lack of adequate notice to the residents living within 1,000 feet of Pamela Park. Giving you just a brief history lesson, because I know I have only 3 minutes up here. Back in 2009, there was a proposed master plan in which changes were going to be made to Pamela Park. Some of those changes included expanding the parking lots and making walking paths. One change that was initially considered but later removed from the master plan was the decision to use AstroTurf on the playing field. Citizens back in 2009 vehemently objected to using AstroTurf, or artificial turf, if you will. And furthermore, the then Parks and Recreation Director decided to remove it from the master plan. Additional changes, now however, in 2014, in stark contrast, the Parks and Rec decided to add the artificial turf back in. This is one example of notice that was not provided with respect to the changes that were being done in Pamela Park. Another change that is being done that was not disclosed to residents was the fact that the warming house is being torn down and rebuilt. This was not in the 2009 master plan. The city has consistently relied on the fact that it sent out a one-page letter to residents back in 2009 detailing the proposed changes. However, if you look at the current master plan, it has varied substantially from the plan that was approved in 2009, thus requiring the city to notice the residents of Pamela Park and the people of Edina. In looking at this, I think that it is the city's obligation to provide the residents of Pamela Park, as well as the people of Edina, the opportunity to provide public comment with respect to the changes that are being made in Pamela Park. Moreover, residents that live within 1,000 feet are going to have their neighborhood changed, their potential property values changed because of the changes being made to Pamela Park. Accordingly, this requires, pursuant to the law, due process notice to be given to residents. My other concern that I have, which I will just briefly address because of my time, is I question whether the city did due diligence in determining which changes were to be made and which changes were appropriate to be made. For example, again, moving back to the artificial turf. Artificial turf is an incredibly toxic substance. The manufacturer, which Edina has chosen, has actually been sued for lead poisoning children with lead. I question whether this is a burden that the city of Edina wants to carry. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clapp. We'll take this up with the Park and Rec Director, and someone will be in contact with you as a follow-up for this.
Hello, my name is Susan Ora at 5900 Oak Lawn Avenue. I'm here tonight to talk about the artificial turf in Pamela Park, and I have something to read. Covering our community and school fields with plastic grass and rubber soil is a disturbing and concerning trend. It has become a status symbol for many communities where they are all too willing to raid already tight education budgets and sacrifice good education for an artificial field. While the science is far from settled, there is enough information to demonstrate that artificial turf may pose significant environmental, health, safety, and quality of life threats to our communities. So far, the studies have found that artificial turf is, number one, leaching toxins into our environment. Studies have concluded that artificial turf has the potential to pollute our environment with dangerous toxins like polycystic aromatic hydrocarbons, phthalates, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, chromium, and lead. As a result, runoff from an artificial turf field that drains to a local creek, such as the Minnehaha Creek, can pose a risk of toxic effects. Kids playing on these fields are exposed to leaching and off-gassing chemicals known to have carcinogenic, reprotoxic, mutagenic, and endocrine-disrupting effects. Number two, increasing sports injury severity. Researchers are studying the effects of artificial turf on increasing sports injuries, including increased frequency and severity of head injuries and increased potential for infection and skin burns. Additionally, artificial turf may cause allergic reactions in individuals with sensitivity to latex and rubbers. Third, creating heat islands. Artificial turf gets much hotter than grass. Studies have found temperatures on artificial turf exceeding even up to 140 degrees exceeding temperatures on nearby natural grass in the range of 39 degrees to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, even up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit hotter. The result is play on artificial turf fields where kids and adults are expected to play their best at temperatures reaching 117 degrees to 157 degrees and even hotter. The City of Edina needs to recognize that until the full impacts of artificial turf are studied, understood, and known, they need to make the protective decision, the risk-averse decision, to keep natural grass in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ora.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Drew Beeson. I reside at 5844 Oak Lawn Avenue, Edina, Minnesota 55424. I just wanted to take my couple of minutes tonight to talk about a couple of things. I really appreciate how much material you folks have to work through in a given evening. To have awards for special people that did special things, I think is really exciting, and I think it was great to see both the art thing and the Reader's Choice images of the bird, and the best in show was for the silky image, and both of those being nature images, which can occur in Pamela Park. I'm here to address a similar cause. There's several issues, in addition to what Christian Clapp had mentioned earlier, that I think need to be addressed tonight. Some of the changes are really detrimental to public health and the environment, and doing some research, just seeing the company that I've seen the purchase order for the turf, 5 grams of the material that they use to use in the infield has a toxic effect. Children ingest these substances when playing on the field, and there's been large increases in manufacturer litigation, as well as in the state of California and in Los Angeles, banning the use of AstroTurf in new contracts and construction. And I should also point out that the cost of that field is I saw just short of $400,000 for the AstroTurf. I just read a report that said that it costs nearly $1 million to remove that field. And the challenge with that is that in addition to the USA Soccer program and the head coach of the USA Soccer team coming out and saying that he wishes that FIFA would remove those AstroTurf fields from the fields that they have included in their playing, the Vikings just backed out of using the exact same turf field that we just signed a contract for, a purchase order for. They just backed out of using it, and now they're in active litigation as a result, because it has been discovered that people are 88% more likely to become injured by using that particular brand of field that we have slated to use at Pamela Park. There's an increase in staph infections, increase in concussions, and not to mention heat islands. And we did discuss this actually this morning with Anne Cattray, and she acknowledged that the heat issue was a major concern. The fact that it can get up to 140, and I've also read 180 degrees on even an 80-degree day, that is a huge concern for people. And I was told that it's going to affect scheduling, and I'm curious to know what the chances are that people are going to not be able to use that field as a result of those health concerns, as well as the temperature issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Beeson. And thanks to Ms. Ora and Ms. Clapp as well for bringing this to our attention. We'll take it under advisement. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to come forward and address the council on a matter of concern to them? All right, we'll move on. Member Bennett?
I did have some occasion to look in my files, and I have all of my materials from 2009. I did attend the public meeting that the Park Board sponsored, sent notice to the neighborhood, almost 1,000 letters mailed, and there was not an overwhelming amount of response, but Director Caprios at the time referred to it as low in number but high in quality. And at the public meeting, there were representatives of the sports associations who spoke in favor of the artificial turf, but almost to a person, the members of the public who spoke, or to a person, the members of the public who spoke opposed artificial turf, as did correspondence that was received And on the basis of that, and also the cost issue at the time, because the previous model had been looking for a private funder, Director Keprios in the following month, August 2009, recommended to the Park Board that the recommendations advanced to the Council for the master plan without the artificial turf, and that the artificial turf be removed indefinitely. And so if folks are thinking that they don't remember seeing much correspondence on it in the fall of 2009, that is why, because the artificial turf had in fact been removed. And while there were some people who corresponded who were concerned about the cost, there were others in the neighborhood and community who were raising concerns similar to those that have been raised this evening.
All right. Thank you. Thank you as well. All right, we're in the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda for the evening. Resolution 2014-86. We've got some prospective donations to the city that we need to approve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? We got a motion and a second to approve 7A, which is Resolution 2014-86, accepting various grants and donations. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. It looks like for this reporting period, many donations to the Edina Arts Center, in-kind donations. So those donors' names will be posted on the city website shortly. Next, we have an appointment to make to the Edina Planning Commission. And Manager Neal, are you going to handle this, or MJ Lamon isn't present, or who's going to handle this appointment or this report out from staff, or do you want us to just handle it here?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So the council
Well,
interviewed.
we did the interview,
Yeah, I'm
so I
sorry.
think we could do the appointment.
Yeah.
Well, we will do the appointment,
Yeah.
I think. Reporting out on the appointment, we had, how many candidates did we have?
9.
Yes,
All right.
we had 10 candidites with one withdrawal. We interviewed 9 for the
All right,
single
thank
opening.
you. So we interviewed 9 candidates. We had good attendance from the council. I think there was unanimity with regard to Mr. Stephen Hobbs, and then there were 2 alternates that we also had concurrence on. Mr. Hobbs, recommended by the council for appointment to the vacancy on the Planning Commission for the term ending March 1, 2017. Does someone want to move Mr. Hobbs?
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to appoint Steve Hobbs to the vacancy on the Planning Commission for a term ending March 1st, 2017, and then we'll handle the alternates on a second motion. Or Member Bennett, you had a
Mayor,
comment?
I'd like to comment that one of the things that made Mr. Hobbs such an attractive candidate for appointment was his background in stormwater issues, including service with a watershed district, and that was identified, that's been identified by members of the Planning Commission and the general public as a very strong need.
Thank you. Any further discussion with regard to Mr. Hobbs? All right, all those in favor of appointing Stephen Hobbs to the vacancy on the Planning Commission for the term ending March 1, 2017, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Then we had 2 alternates that we also selected. James Bennett, first alternate, Scott Hughes, second alternate. Is there a motion with respect to those 2 alternates?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second with respect to those alternates in the order delineated. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. Great group of candidates. All 9 were just terrific. And now we have the presentation from Manager Neal with regard to the potential final approval and authorization to proceed with the Edina Veterans Memorial. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We also have in attendance 2 of the members from the committee. And do you want to get up and identify yourselves, please?
He's going to do more than just identify.
Oh, he's going to
himself.
present. Well, let you make the introduction then.
Just to give you a bit of background, and also for folks in the audience, in November of 2011, the council conducted a public hearing and then gave the go-ahead for the project to be designed. And the project is the Edina Veterans Memorial, and we have it. It has been located from the planning purposes in Utley Park. The council also gave some direction to staff to work with the committee as the committee moved the project forward, but that you also wanted to make sure that the fiscal house was in order before things started down the road for actual construction. A budget was established, revenue was raised, and we're here tonight to tell you that The project is at a stage in terms of raising the amount of revenue that it needs, that it's ready to proceed to construction. There have been some modifications made to the original design. We want to show you what those are tonight and then seek the council's approval to move the project forward. I want to introduce Mr. Richard Olson, who is the chair of the Veterans Memorial, and he's got a brief presentation he will make and discuss and be able to answer some of your questions and also discuss the changes that have been made. Mr. Olson.
And I also have Lance Elliott. Lance is our project design engineer. Sure. So when I became the chair, my major issue was to raise the money for the memorial. We brought Lance on as a volunteer. He's an Edina resident, and he is going to work with the construction side of it. So that's how we did it.
And I would just comment that at least one or two of the meetings I've been at, Lance has done an exemplary job of volunteering his time and working on this. It's really commendable. I can't thank you enough for the work that you've done and what you've given to your community here. Both of you. Richard is leading,
when we look
and Lance
when we look
also.
at how this project stalled for a while, I mean, bringing Lance on was a wonderful move because he keeps us on task with all the stuff you're going to see here. So one of the changes we've done is that was the original idea that came before, was the eagle and the wreath. And at the time that piece was selected, I think it was going to be around $80,000. And when we looked at how much we were going to have to raise in addition to buying that was out in New York State, have it shipped here and everything. We started looking at where could we, cut some corners and still have a great monument. And one of them was on the wreath, eagle and wreath. So we put it out to our committee to go find another design and a sculpture. They found one over in Wisconsin, American Bronze Casting, that agreed to do it. And that's what it's going to look like now. The artist that initially had the wreath got in touch with us and said, I don't want you using my eagle and wreath idea. And rather than go to the copyright and all that, we said fine. So the committee selected an eagle with a folded American flag. And Lance, do you have anything to talk about why that was selected? I mean, it's going to hold the eagle. We needed something to center the eagle on top of the granite piece.
I think mainly they looked at a number of different options. They narrowed it down to the flag being the preferred mounting piece and a symbol as a part of the eagle that they felt was even maybe more significant than the wreath itself.
So that's the modification we've made to the design. Now here's the project overview, and this is Lance's work on how he came up with everything. And as you can see, it's going to be $324,000 is what's needed to build it, after we take into account the $406 total memorial cost, the $81,000 in gift in kind that the contractors have agreed to give us to get this built. Lance?
I guess basically when I got involved a little over a year ago, my main goal was to stay with the original concept design that all of you have seen previously and approved originally. It was to keep it as close to that as possible. Richard mentioned the flag. The only two other things I can think of that have changed at all regarding the concept that you originally saw was the schematic picture, and we can put that up if we want to on the projector. The original concept shows the flagpoles mounted into a granite flagpole base. And if we get close enough here, I'll just try to point. Right here, the three circles represent the flagpoles mounted into the granite. The issue was, once I got to the actual geometry of placing the flagpoles, they're just too close together for the flags to fly without wrapping up around the poles and everything. So an alternative to that is very, very similar, but we'll keep the same dimension for the flagpole base, the granite base that'll be there. Will just give us a little bit more room for the quote that's in that base. And the three flagpoles are in the landscaping set just beyond that base. So they're in the same location so from a distance, they'll look like the flagpoles are basically in the exact same spot they were previously proposed. It's just where we actually mount them will be a little different than what the picture showed from the original concept. So basically everything else, geometry, location, the paver plaza, the granite piece that the Eagle sets on, the granite itself will be made out of solid granite that's mined out of Minnesota. It's a Masabi black granite, which is a really nice granite piece. I don't think that's going to show up in the screen at all, but I can pass that around if anybody is interested in looking at that. It's basically a 6-foot tall by 10-foot wide massive piece of granite that will be made by 3 pieces put side by side. That's what the Eagle will be mounted on, and that's where the military bronze medallions will be, and then the names of all of the soldiers that have lost their lives in the past wars will be listed on this monument.
Did you want to show them the pavers, what the pavers will look like? Did you?
Well, basically the pavers will be a combination of the main paver surface and then the dark star that you see in the patio on the picture there, that'll be done in the same black Masabi, accenting both the border and the star as a part of the patio plaza.
Any questions on the design?
No, I think those are nice adjustments, and
so here's the exciting.
Helped us make the budget.
Here's the exciting. This is where I get excited, right? Fundraising. The gifts we received.
Let's point out that you are a fundraising professional.
Well, we like to think so. Gifts received $146,000. We did a mailing, and every resident of Edina should have received a letter from me at the end of June, 1st of July, and we received $62,000 from that mailing. So that was a nice, people really came out, and we went from, $10,000 down to one of our residents sent us a check for $3. So we've gotten nice broad support from the community on that mailing. Today I spoke with Dave Frauenschuh, who has pledged the last $50,000. He has agreed to pay us $30,000 by September 5th and then $20,000 on January 5th of 2015. The city's given us $39,000. The gift in time totals $81,000. So we've got $317,000 that we can use to submit to the state grant, which will then match up to $225,000 of that money. So we've raised the money that the state wants to see to get their match, and the project's going to come in at, that $324,000. So we've got some additional funds there.
Can you explain a little about the state grant? Or Manager Neal, can you explain?
Scott, sure.
You want to?
I can. The state grant is included in the bonding bill, so it's a statutory. It's not from a program. It was a statutory allocation from the state legislature. It was approved by both houses and signed by the governor. It does, because it is a direct appropriation to our project, we've had a number of direct meetings with state legislative staff to figure out how exactly we access the money. It is reimbursable, so we have to incur the cost first, and then we go to the state and we ask for reimbursement. We demonstrate that we've incurred $225,000 if we want all of the money in the appropriate manner. We have forms that we have to fill out that comply with the program, but we have had enough communication with them now that we know how to do it.
And this grant was obtained as a result of the advocacy of our local legislators?
Indeed it was. They worked very hard to put that, to get that money into the bonding bill and deserve a lot of credit for it.
Mr. Olson, any final comment? You want an approval from us tonight?
Scott, is that what we want, is approval tonight?
Yeah.
Because what we'd like to do is get started on this. Lance has got, here, Lance, bring him up to speed on the building.
Well, and I think in the cover memo to the council too, I explained that in order to meet the deadlines that you've established of being able to be ready by next Memorial Day, it's important to get the project going right now.
Correct, yeah. Our plan is to get started as soon as possible, probably with everything, procurement and scheduling. We're looking at probably mid-September to late September start, with the goal to have most of the overall project substantially complete by the end of October, maybe 2 weeks into November. We'll have the majority of the project done, with the exception of the actual large granite pieces that'll be set in place, and the eagle sculpture itself. That'll be actually set in place with a crane next spring, shortly before Memorial Day. So we'll basically be able to get that installed and then do an unveiling soon after it's installed, versus installing it sooner, having it sit there all winter and doing the unveiling in the spring. So that's our planned schedule. Weather may prevent us to get as far as we want this fall, but we'll get it to a point where it's winterized, and then we'll be able to complete everything in the spring before Memorial Day.
Member Bennett?
Yes, and Manager Neal, it's my understanding, or that we have actually as a body approved some additional city work at Utley Park, which will be the location of this, in the nature of parking lot improvement and improvement to a building that houses both bathroom and some city utility.
That's correct. Right. There's a restroom project for Utley Park, and because it was also a well house, there were some special requirements that went into the renovation of that.
So these will be available to the general park user, but they also will be available to people who are visiting the Veterans Memorial.
That's correct. Right.
Great, thank
Member
you.
Swenson?
Veterans Day, November, May?
May.
November? Veterans.
November 11th.
Thank you. You're going to have a lot of work done by then. Could have a warm-up party. It'll be great. Thank you. I would move final approval and authorization to proceed for the Edina Veterans Memorial.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second to grant final approval and authorization to proceed with the construction of the Edina Veterans Memorial Project. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thanks,
Mr. Olson, thank you for your wonderful leadership. Lance, Elliott, just terrific work. Thank you so much for your past efforts and what you're going to be doing to shepherd this through to conclusion. It'll be a wonderful, fitting tribute to everybody that served in the military, especially those fallen folks that lived in Edina.
And I wanted to once again thank, Kristen's been just wonderful to work with on this committee. Scott's been great, Ann, we're very blessed to have a great, city staff that helps us on this thing, so.
And just a piece of city trivia, Lance and one of his sons are two of the foremost runners in the country in their age groups. So I bragged them up a little bit, and I see those twin boys of his play house league basketball, and they can run like the wind. So you had something else you wanted to say, Lance?
No, thanks.
I'll
just say I've had really enjoyed my last year being a part of the Veterans Committee. I thank Richard for asking me to be on that. And we also haven't talked about the other committee members. There are almost a dozen people on the committee that have worked hard for a number of years, longer than I have been on the committee. So they brought a lot. They did a lot of work on the front end to get the idea going. Just took a little while for it to come together, and so I think we should recognize them as well. And it'll be, I think, a really fun unveiling next Memorial Day, and see a complete project and have everybody there to be a part of it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning them. They're just a terrific group of people, and thank them for us as well for all their hard work and making this reality, having this become reality. So, terrific. Thanks, guys. All right. Correspondence petitions. Anything else other than what was on the dais this evening, Manager Neal?
Nope, everything's here.
Aviation noise update. I sent a little one to Manager Neal and to Member Bennett. I didn't bring it with me, but you maybe have that information about. It wasn't residents dreaming that there was more activity in July. In fact, volumes doubled, as I roughly recall, from the correspondence I received from the MAC. Member Bennett?
Here are the latest. And first of all, folks should know that the monitoring is underway and will be taking place. They advanced the date during which the Metropolitan Airport Commission was going to be temporarily monitoring aviation noise at 2 locations in Edina, one in the southeast quadrant and one in the southwest quadrant. Those are chiefly measuring departing flights. I think I didn't get an answer yet to my question about whether they can't measure both, because
They do measure both.
because that is what is done with the permanent towers. Yep. And then also there is a tower located in St. Louis Park under what is used chiefly as an arrival pattern. And when that monitoring is complete, it will run for a 2-week period. There will be a report made to the council later this fall, and we will, at that time, inform people where the monitors were located. But we will be looking also at past data. Mayor, I think you had a question about knowing how things line up with the past, and those operations reports are all online at macnoise.com. So with a little bit of research, a person can go back and look month by month for past years. So from Chad Lecve, who is the Director of Director of Environment with the Metropolitan Airports Commission. Dear Mayor Hovland, thank you for your follow-up email. My staff examined the airfield construction logs for July and also met with the airside project manager regarding runway closures in July. There were many nighttime 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. closures for crack and joint sealing on the parallels, 30 left, 30 right. As such, it is likely that activities could have had an impact on operational levels. This is to your point earlier, Mayor. In July 2014, there were 6,272 departures from runway 30L, compared with 5,196 in 2013. This increase is attributable to wind speed and direction variations between the 2 years, and in 2014 there were more days in July with prevailing winds from the northwest. MAC staff is scheduled to produce new altitude gradient maps in November 2014 that will become a part of routine reports. They have used the density gradient reports, and those have been very useful and informative. It is safe to say that aircraft departures of larger, heavier aircraft will be at lower altitudes on days with hot air temperatures compared to days with cold temperatures. As we've noted at previous meetings, although the fleet mix is about 50% regional jets now, those regional jets have gone from being in size about 40 to 50 seats to about 100 and fully loaded with each departure. So that certainly does make a difference. And I think in Mr. Lecve's previous correspondence with you, there is another set of numbers that he gives. In June, the runway was used for 3,457 departures to the north and west, many of which turn westbound over Edina. This is where, Mayor, you got the impression of the doubling, which is correct. In July, the number of departures from runway 30L rose to 6,274. So for the folks who feel like they perceived a sudden increase and dramatic increase in noise, those are the numbers that correspond with this perception. And altitude trends, this was done last year, measured the average altitude at aircraft at the eastern city limit of Edina is about 600 feet lower in July as it is in January. Also perceived water makes a difference. We know that. All those ponds, Cornelia Lake.
Amplifies noise.
Yep, reflects it louder to adjacent residents. And we, Manager Neal and I will be hosting tomorrow a meeting of chiefly, I think, staff from other cities represented on the NOC. And one of the agenda items that I hope to discuss is what we have possible potential for area-wide amelioration, because every time I attend a public input meeting, I'm hearing from residents of different cities who are reporting essentially the same things our residents are reporting. This is not an Edina alone issue. I think the solutions are going to be area-wide, but I do think that people are really calling for solutions, and we need to be discussing more than just monitoring the noise. I agree with the people I've been talking with by telephone.
Good.
Thank you.
Manager Neal, anything else on that topic?
No. The Noise Oversight Committee meeting is 2 o'clock tomorrow in Mayor's Conference Room.
When will we see some preliminary data on the noise monitoring?
I believe one of the reasons for advancing the actual monitoring is that they will be making a full report. and they will come and speak to our council. When we were anticipating that the monitoring was going to be done in September, we were looking at a reporting date of no later than November. We informed that December is a very busy month for our council. I think now with monitoring in August, perhaps we can anticipate a report in October.
I think they are planning to do it in the second meeting in October, because they also had a planned staffing shortage issue, and that was the other reason they moved it up. So that's what we're looking at, is the second, at this point, we're looking at the second week of October. Excuse me, the second meeting in October.
All right, good. Thank you. Thank you both. Council comments. Member Sprague.
Thank you. This morning I attended the second meeting of the Municipal Revenue Committee of Metro Cities, and two things of interest to our city. One is in the last session, the legislature dedicated an additional $12 million to homestead credit refund, property tax relief. And as part of that, they require the Minnesota Department of Revenue to do a new notice, an annual notice that will be going out to those eligible for a homestead credit refund of at least $1,000. This will be going out in the summer, and those residents will be notified that they're eligible. You can go online to file. Can you scroll back? And if you go to the Department of Revenue site, there's talks about the various issues. So it tells you about eligibility, and then if you keep going to the next page, tells you about the form. And I thought there was another general information. You can go online and fill out the application and find out if you're eligible or not. You can. That's for renters. But for the property tax relief portion, you can go online and there it is on the front. Go down just a little bit. Homeowners, you may be eligible to file electronically for free, so you can go to e-services online, find out if you're eligible, and also file for it. But again, the notice will be going out annually from now on if you are eligible for at least $1,000 in relief. Secondly, thank you very much, Director Benarat. The second thing is we were talking about a current policy that recommends that the state go back and look at construction purchases being exempted from sales tax, municipal construction purchases. As it stands right now, however, there's a requirement that construction purchases that are part of a lump sum contract do not qualify. That would be almost every road project we do. So last session, Senator Rest and Representative Lesh sponsored a bill that would allow cities to exempt those construction purchases as bid out normally as they do as a lump sum contract. There's invoices and so on that they can prove what the materials portion are, and that would save about 7 to 8% of the material cost, which is not insignificant when you add up all the projects. So I asked the staff to send the previous bill to Senator Franzen, and hopefully they can follow up in this session. That's all I have.
Thank you. Member Swenson.
Yes, I'm following up on a road reconstruction project that we talked about last year, the last spring, late summer, winter, Chad, and it was the feasibility of sidewalks on that road reconstruction we have in the Arden, Juanita, Indianola area. And we've had some phone calls and letters about it and everything, and I know that you were going to do some traffic warrants to look at that feasibility. I wonder if that's done yet and if you could speak to that.
Yes, Member Swenson. With all of our neighborhood reconstruction projects, we start with the comp plan as a guiding document to see what we need to do in those neighborhoods. In our comp plan in Chapter 7 is a sidewalks plan, and in that sidewalk plan, the Arden Park neighborhood had most streets with sidewalks installed. So we began discussions with the residents at that point with sidewalks on most of these roadways. As we work through the feasibility of these projects, we do traffic counts like you discussed, and we have completed traffic counts on the majority of those inside streets, so Juanita, Indianola, and 54th Street. And looking at those numbers, I would not recommend sidewalks on there based on our current warrant system that we use for installing sidewalks. Typically, we look at sidewalks anywhere from 500 to 750 cars a day is where we want to get pedestrians out of the roadway. So those inner streets now don't meet our current warrants. We're still studying the piece of Indianola Avenue from 50th to 500 feet south because there is a church and an apartment complex there. So we're still gathering data on that piece of the roadway. So with the current traffic counts for those inner ones, I would not recommend sidewalks at this time.
So, but you said, so the stub of Indianola is being looked at still separately, and that would go from that top of that circle to north
Covenant
to
Church.
50th. Okay,
So
got
we're
it.
still doing traffic counts along that block
Okay.
to see if that's warranted to have a sidewalk.
Well, since this is under design now, I thought that would give us time for a design change. So I'm going to make a motion that we remove the horseshoe part of Juanita and Indianola from having sidewalks in the plan coming forward to us.
I'll second, and I want to also add a friendly amendment. Would that not include the 51st?
The teeny 51st
Yeah,
stub,
that's-
yes, that does include the teeny 51st stub because that doesn't meet warrants either.
There's two sections of 54th on each side of the horseshoe.
But
Yep.
your motion leaves open whether we need a sidewalk from the joinder of Indianola and Juanita north to 50th Street.
Correct, because with a church, with parking there, and then a commercial, well, not a commercial building, but an
Apartments.
apartment, I think it's important that you be able to get out of the neighborhood, and that's really that ring road and being able to get out of the neighborhood. Arden would still have a sidewalk, Minnehaha Boulevard would still have a sidewalk, 52nd Street would still have a sidewalk. But the motion just includes the horseshoe, and you're right, the two little 51st nubs.
I know we've had at least one resident here expressing his concern over our sidewalk plan for that neighborhood, and I've had other residents of the neighborhood, very reasonable folks, email me, wanted me to walk the area with them. I hadn't had a chance to do that yet, but I've been over there many times and understand your motion well.
Sure. Well, I think the fact that we now have a traffic count is important. Mary?
I have walked the area with residents. Spent about an hour the first time, about a half hour the second time. And they are, I mean, all the discussions have been very friendly. And I have to say, while we were standing in the middle of the street talking, probably 3 cars went by total in the 2 times I was over there. Now, that's not Edina Art Fair time.
No.
That's a very busy time, and parking is controlled during that time.
Right.
But it is. I mean, the residents called it, and so I appreciate their wanting to talk with us about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you made a good observation there that their conduct in all ways was very civilized, trying to be educational and informative. So, Member Bennett, any comment?
Well, just appreciate the provision of data, and I think that it helps guide good decisions.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion as stated, removing the sidewalks from the loop on Indianola and Juanita and the 51st Street stub, we'll call it?
Stubs.
There's
Stubs.
2, 1 on each side.
Yep. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried.
Chad, could you let that neighborhood know? I think Troy Paulson seems to be a good contact there. But there are a couple people that I think have the ear of the neighbors. Thank you.
All right.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Member Bennett.
Thank you. I want to follow up on something that we are seeking some public comment on and just make sure that there's some common understanding or that a couple of misstatements that have been made publicly are corrected. This council approved a subdivision project in the Morningside neighborhood that would result in the creation of 8 new lots. And as with our other projects, commercial and residential of this type, they're required to handle their stormwater on site. It's about 19,000 cubic feet of stormwater, and we were originally presented with a sketch plan and then an application that requested some variances and offered some conservation easements for slopes and trees. The trees were originally proposed to be 86 saved. At the time of final approval, after evaluation by an arborist, there were just 10 in the conservation easement. But the property owner was offering sort of innovative stormwater management in a receptacle under a new street at the top of a hill with the overflow to be able to flow down the hill to public open space, which is at the corner of Littell Street and Lynn Avenue, where there it would then naturally infiltrate into the ground, which it's currently been doing. Overflow for the neighborhood gathers there. It was a creek bed years ago. One of the residents, in fact, the property owner, recalled being out there in a rowboat when he was a child. After determining that overflow down the hill would be over one of their lots, and that they would be needing to excavate quite a bit of earth in order to create this receptacle, it's all possible, and they had previously considered and rejected a stormwater pond option. But that the property owner, the land has now been sold to a developer, so the developer is asking to combine the two stormwater options, the receptacle and the overflow, into a receptacle at the base of the hill located on public land. The 8th lot is at the foot of the hill. It lies between the original property owner's lot and the public land. At the meeting at the Public Works building last week, reference was made to a tank that would be some 56,000 cubic feet or more in size. Notice was mailed to people in the neighborhood, but the notice simply said something about tree preservation and storm water. It didn't talk about public land, and it didn't talk about a real change up in the plan, not handling the water on property. And as a consequence, there were a number of people in the neighborhood who thought it was a repeat of a meeting that had been held the previous week, to which just immediate neighbors had been invited. And attendance as a result was probably under 20 people. Fewer than 20 people signed in, most of them adjacent neighbors to the property. I have heard from some people who didn't attend, again, because they thought it was just a repeat of information that they had heard before. Some of the questions that have been raised are, what will happen to the grade of the public land? I heard reference at the meeting, our city engineer spoke, and with this storm water that's originating from the new development, the new lots, plus other storm water, the plan that I heard would change the grade of public land. It would change the natural infiltration, and I believe that there are also some trees that would need to be removed. And these are some questions that people would like to have answered so that they can comment in an informed way on it. Also, the builder's engineer, the correspondence, the notice said, save trees. At the meeting, people said, well, how many trees, and are you going to save them? And he was very careful to say that they would try to save trees. So I think it's important, again, as people consider this and offer their opinions, that they know that there's been no promise made. These are not a conservation easement like the 10 trees. This is a promise to try to save about 3 or 4 or 5 trees that are alongside the street. There also has been a statement made both at the meeting and also in writing, and it came out actually in a City Extra earlier today that I didn't get directly, although I subscribe. It did get sent to me through the neighborhood e-list, that locating this receptacle this infiltration receptacle on public land will mean that the city can't sell the land or won't sell the land for development. Well, our comprehensive plan protects public open land and parkland in the same category, and we have repeatedly stated in our comprehensive plan that we will not sell parkland for development.
It's a platted lot.
I'm sorry, it's city open space. It's in our comprehensive plan as city open space.
It's also a platted lot with an address that we bought years ago.
It's in our
Okay, I'm not suggesting that we sell it, I'm just a little confused as to
Right,
what it actually is.
it's in our comprehensive plan as open space.
So where are you going with this?
Well, what I'm going at is I think that there has been some misinformation, a fair amount of misinformation, and I want to credit Manager Neal with actually sending out an email that gave better information to people about the nature of the meeting. Because going into that meeting last Thursday night, people really did not understand what it was about, did not understand that they wanted to attend it, and didn't even have it on their radar. But the email that Manager Neal sent out at least clarified the nature of the proposal. So I did want to give thanks for that. I also want to correct the statement about the trees, because again, it's not a promise, it's not a conservation easement, it's an offer to try to save trees alongside the roadway that they're going to construct.
I don't know if it's 3 or 4 trees, though. I think it's more than that, isn't it?
No, it's not.
There's graphics they produced that I would say probably had 10 trees along that east property line of that roadway.
It was not 10 trees. They showed on the graphic the 10 trees in the conservation easement. They showed it's a minimal number of trees. It's 3, 4, 5 trees alongside the roadway. In addition to 1 that's in the conservation easement, 9 in the conservation easement are on the slope above the previous property owner's home. 1 is located along that roadway. That's the 10 that are in the easement. And it's not 10 trees. There aren't room.
I'm just
for the
talking
10
about
trees.
along the street.
Right, and again, their offer is to try to save them. And when the straightforward question was asked at the public meeting, that was the answer that was given. No assurance beyond that. And then again, the nature of the public land. Councilmember Swenson, I understand your question about it being platted. Historically, that land has periodically been underwater.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that we, actually, I'm kind of interested in learning more about what it can do for the city to be able to take stormwater, not just from those lots, but the area around that, and to be able to allow it a slower percolate out and a slower infill into the ground. So,
You mean increase our stormwater capacity?
right, if it could increase our stormwater capacity significantly, I would be interested in hearing about that.
Sure, and I would imagine that both could be done, that the developer could retain and treat stormwater on the property as is required by our code, and the city would still have the ability going forward to use that land that's now operating with natural infiltration for the development of an infiltration infrastructure if that was determined to be in the city's best interest going forward. But given some of the other development
But
decisions...
they're offering to pay for our infrastructure, correct?
No.
Or
The
we'd have
cost
to have,
isn't-
there'd be a cost share.
There would be a cost share that would cost the developer no more than it would cost to construct their facility on their land, and there would be a public cost that's not yet been determined that would be paid for out of the utility fund. In other words, our rate,
pro rata.
our utility customers. But again, we would always have that ability going forward. One of my questions is, how does our ability get impaired or limited by the addition of this stormwater that's required to be retained when we don't have any control over the development of impervious surface, the amount of driveway, the amount of patio, the amount of changes to grade that get made outside of the slope easement? We would be taking on that burden going forward, and some other questions regarding maintenance and the like.
What's next? What's coming that people have a chance to participate in and comment on?
Well, Mayor, you had one letter sent to you that was in the correspondence packet that I saw for the first time yesterday. We've received some comment by email. I would imagine that Manager Neal has received some comment. And I would say that finally, in terms of the factual surround of this consideration, we have some other development that's been proposed in our city, and we have some concern among the public about the use of public land to assist that private development in taking care of things that private development is supposed to take care of. And so
are you talking about it because you don't want it done, or that you want information cleared up that you think is confusing? What you've just presented.
What's the next step?
Okay, next step is I believe we're continuing to take comment from people. I am have always been an advocate of people having information. And to me, the information that was put forward so far had been limited and somewhat slanted by the developer and confusing. And my goal tonight was to try to clear that up.
Okay.
For myself personally, based on what I know now and after attending that meeting, with a few unanswered questions, but most of my questions still answered, I would oppose this. The developer has a lot at the foot of the hill. If the goal is to move the water off the hill, the developer could locate the receptacle on its own land still, because it's my understanding from, again, this public meeting and our engineer's comments at it, that the receptacle would occupy about 1/2 to 1/3 of the public land. Again, changing the grade and what could be planted on it. But in that light, there is option available to the developer at the top of the hill and at the bottom of the hill.
It sounds like
from a staff standpoint, what's next?
Yeah.
There's correct that we are sending out more information. There was a communication today to the Morningside Neighborhood Association. We use that to send out some of the information Councilmember Bennett was referencing. Tomorrow we're sending out a mailing to the whole neighborhood again, because we had concerns that some people aren't signed up for that association, don't get the emails. We're on vacation, what have you. So we're trying to get out all the information through a mailing tomorrow to those folks to again provide input to me, Manager Neal, or the City Homes Development themselves. We did reference their website for their graphics. Their graphics are on their website, and they do have a line on there that says if you support this petition, sign it. We just referenced the exhibits on that website for our letter that we sent out. So we're still gathering input, and the hope is they're coming in on Thursday to show us final designs, what they think could be done on that site, what it would cost them, what it would cost the city, and we begin the discussions on that cost share agreement if it does go forward. So those are the discussions we're having later in the week, and if we get enough input and enough understanding, we may bring this to the September 2nd council meeting.
So it's headed for us regardless.
Mm.
Yep, if they're concerned about timing, of course, because they want to build something this year. They have the plan set forth as approved. They could build it right now. I don't know whether, if it was September 2nd or the 16th, whether that would matter. If they'd say, well, we can't go to the 2nd, forget it. I don't know if that's the case, but we'll have a lot more discussions on Thursday.
In my understanding of public events in this city, the city has not sold public land for development in at least 20 plus years. I've been following city issues since 1993, and I'm not aware of an occasion.
Were we selling this land? I didn't hear that in any of that presentation.
No, but the developer has said that, and that's one of the misstatements that was actually circulated to the Neighborhood Association today that I'm concerned about. The developer has claimed that the two chief benefits of this are the saving of the trees, again, that it said at the public meeting, we try to save, and second, that the public land then would not be sold for development. And I think the record needs to be set straight that at least in my 20 years of knowledge of city events, this city has never sold public parkland or public open space for development. And so I think that there are people who I think have had their opinions misshapen by that piece of, by that warning that's not justified.
All right, so it sounds like it's going to come back to us. They have a plan that's been approved. They could use that drainage plan if they decide to. Or if they decide they want to come to us for a modification of that, or at least an attempted modification, they can do so.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Member Bennett. Member Brindle?
All right. I just have a short one on a lighter topic. The last time I was here was before the Torchlight concert, which was held the evening of Sunday, August 10th. And if you think back to Sunday, August 10th, you probably were not outside.
No.
However, there were about 2,000 people who were outside, and they actually wanted to stay for the whole concert. And it was raining, and sometimes it was raining kind of hard, so it was kind of a field of umbrellas out there. But just a huge thank you to everybody, all those hardy souls who stuck around and enjoyed the evening. It was really at their request that we continued to play. There was no thunder and lightning. Centennial Lake staff is second to none. in not only the park that they put out for people to enjoy, but also the support they give to performing groups. And Sousa Band is just one of very, very many performing groups at Centennial Lake. So a huge call out to them on that. And then Torchlight also has fireworks. So the fire department was there through that evening, and the fireworks went off without a hitch. So just a huge thank you to all those people. And then we are within a week of school starting. Just wishing everyone a great school year and a safe start to 2014-15.
Thank you. Member Brindle, it's nice to hear you sounding better.
Well, yes. I have not been speaking much tonight, which is why there is something there. So it comes and goes still.
And it was a 2-week battle there.
It is just, it's laryngitis. I breathed something in that just made my larynx just not work. And so, but it's stronger every day, so that's a good thing.
Off the opera circuit.
Speaking of education, segueing to that, Manager Neal and I attended the new teacher kickoff event or workshop, if you want to call it that, on the 12th. And it's always interesting to see all the new teachers and hear about them, where they're coming from, most with experience and coming into the system. A really very enjoyable lunch, and Superintendent Dressen does a wonderful job on these events, and particularly this morning when it was all of the teachers kicked off their season at the Fick Auditorium with a Jimmy Fallon theme with Ricky Dressen as the host, and they had the little stage band, and he had his sidekick, and
Green Hornet Band.
Some of us appeared there as guests, fleeting guests. Belinda Jensen was the guest hornet. You know, she did a great job out there dancing away, and then she takes the hat off, and people get to see who's dancing. You know, she was a lot better dancer than I was last year.
I don't know. You were pretty good. You were pretty good. Yeah.
And then on the 12th, we also had the Rotary clock dedication down at Centennial Lakes. And on the screen in front of you is this beautiful new clock down in front of the Hughes Centrum. It just fits in wonderfully down there. It's in a perfect spot. On the left, you see Jeff O., who's the current president of the Edina Noon Rotary, which was the donating organization, Steve Slice, and then past President Scott McDonald, proudly standing in front of the clock that the Noon Rotary donated to the city of Edina. It was a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. Yep. All right. So, what else? We did walk with the mayor on Saturday, and quite a few folks showed up. We started at the community garden. A few thoughts there from people that are over there all the time. Working. There's some abandoned plots over there, and I'm wondering, you know, as much activities we had and interest that we had in having a plot with people that abandon a plot by a certain date, and I think folks, the master gardener Larry Sapola could tell us what the date should be for cutoff. We should not re-rent. I guess there is a modest amount of rent that they pay. Yeah. We should have an agreement that says that if you don't plant your crop by a certain time, you know, we're gonna have somebody else come in there and do it, because there's 3-4 abandoned plots in there that are not in a low spot. There's a great spot there for a community garden where there's a lot of drainage into the southeast corner. It's just the way the terrain works over there, and there's a gravity feed right into that corner, and they can't grow anything. So I think we should think about a little rain garden in that corner. But there's some folks that have done just a beautiful job of planting gardens over there, and I got a donated hat from some of the folks at plot number 43 or 46. I can't remember what it was, but has a big tomato on the front of it. And then we walked over and looked at the public art on the promenade. Barbara Lavaleur was with us, as well as several other people. And folks were also there concerned about drainage issues in town. Ken Potts was there. I didn't get a chance to visit with him. Some other folks that don't think we're getting drainage right yet. And I think it's a legitimate concern that we need to be mindful of on the staff level, and maybe Manager Neely or Director Milner, you can tell us
Sure.
how we're handling these issues as houses get bigger, even though the council has decided how much house you should build on a lot. People are maximizing that size of that house according to the code, and we have seen some drainage issues that have caused neighbors problems, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. As Member Bennett said, we need to make sure they keep the water on their property and don't add any more water to what's already flowing onto the neighbor at the time the house is torn down. So
Can I
Manager Neal?
offer a bit of explanation?
Some insight
about
would
that?
be good.
So just Director Milner, Monday, the new guy. Yeah, he started today. Okay. Remind me what his name is.
Charles Girk.
Charlie?
Charlie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Started today. He's the new civil engineering gentleman that is going to be really in charge of our drainage plans, reviewing plans, field inspections, etc. Ross Bintner, who you know is our environmental engineer, has been shouldering that burden for most of the year and has been really doing, I think, quite good work, even though you're hearing complaints from time to time about it. This has been a tough year with the rain that we've had. I think everyone knows that. And it has really been a tough year to address drainage issues. He has been working on that very hard, but now he had a whole other portfolio of work that he was working on as well. But now that we do have a new staff person who's going to be taking that on, we think you're going to hear less complaints from neighbors and probably more complaints from developers and builders. I know you're hearing some already, but as we enforce our existing regulations in a manner that we probably haven't enforced quite as tightly before, I think you'll begin to hear from the other side of that equation more. Because they're now doing some things that they didn't have to do before.
All right, good. Thank you. Director Milner.
Just one thing to add. We are going to the Planning Commission next week to review our whole building permit process. Following that meeting, we were going to come back to council to review how that process is now improved and some of the stormwater issues you brought up. So we'll be back with planning and building with that issue here at a later date.
Okay, good. Just two other quick, well, I guess we've got a meeting Thursday with the school board on some transportation-related issues, all of us. Or who's meeting with the school board?
No.
You? Our designated team.
Yep, our
is meeting
designated
with the
team.
school.
Councilmember Brindle, you, me,
All right.
and
Okay.
Bill Nundorf.
And then Golf Task Force has been meeting every Friday morning. That will continue this week. And then I got a tab meeting tomorrow over at the Met Council. That's it for me. Manager Neal, your comments, and then we've got a policy discussion on conflict of interest. So you're going to cover that as well.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of things. First, our visioning process. We have, as of today, 73 confirmed participants. Our target was 120 participants. If you have additional suggestions of folks that you think we ought to reach out to, we need to know that fairly soon so we can get those folks committed and informed about the magnitude of the commitment, days, times, etc. If you have some names, we'd like to get them, and you can get them directly to, in the next 2 days, to Assistant Manager Kurt. I think you are aware that a couple of years ago we changed the way that we allocated money within our budget for human services funding. So we do some human services funding out of our CDBG accounts, and we also do some out of our general fund. And the general fund is the fund that we allocate money on a contract basis. So we do an RFP, we receive proposals, and then we enter into a service contract, and that's the way that we have to do that under Minnesota law, because we're not allowed to donate money to charitable organizations. We have been doing that on an annual basis. What we'd like to suggest to you is that we do it on a biennial basis, so that it has the same kind of funding structure as our budget. We can do a couple of things if you agree that you'd like to do that. There's a lot of logistics and time that goes into that process of allocating that money. We think we can do it pretty well on a biennial basis. There's a couple things we can do. If you want to make that decision tonight, you can. If you want to think about it and make that decision at a later date, you can do that too. But we would like to know fairly soon so that we can begin the planning process for that, whether we're doing it again this year or we can defer it till next year.
Do you want to discuss that now?
Sure.
Well, if we did it every other year, would the dollars be twice as much?
I think you'd be essentially, because you'd be making 2-year
2
commitments to
Okay.
people.
All right, so it wouldn't cause us to be able to support, because basically, we're paying for services already rendered.
Right, 'cause we're paying in
Yeah.
arrears, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
if they don't
And-
provide the service, they don't get our money.
Right, and they have to prove how many people they've served and what the cost is of that service.
Right.
So, okay, all right, okay, that answered my question, thank you.
It really is more a matter of, do you open it up? Do you open up an allocation process every year and have kind of new applicants come in or new applicants not come in? How long do you want to make that commitment?
Member Bennett?
I see 2 advantages to the current system. And the first is that we have had requests from our board and commission members for more joint efforts where they get to find out about the work of other boards or commissions or work in the community that they may not be directly involved with. And I think this human services funding process, which has gone from being a subcommittee or working group of the Human Rights and Relations Commission to a committee that's been made up of representatives from the different boards or commissions, that is one of those processes. Brings people face to face. The second is that I think not everybody in our community who is eligible to receive services knows about them. And I think that there is a public information component to it, where when the applicants come to the council and present, or the committee members present on their behalf, information that may be a little quieter or under the radar during much of the year then gets brought more to light and known publicly. So I would expect that has to be balanced against the staff time and cost that's spent with it. And I would really like to know how that cost-benefit weighs out before I would know whether I favor the biennial or the annual approach.
Okay. And there's also, I would say, there's a cost component on the recipient side as well, because we're talking about whether they would gear up for a funding cycle once every year or once every other year.
Sure.
Isn't there some variability on the amount of money, the CDBG grant money that we get every year? So then how do you deal with that budgetary variability from year to year? Do you give them a pro rata share of any increase, or they suffer any pro rata share of decrease? I'd like to know that as well.
The funding process that I'm talking about with this particular item is only the funding from the general fund, and that's the fund that we control what that level of funding is.
All right.
The CDBG, we don't have as much, we don't control the funding cycle, so we have to go with that.
And another distinction is that CDBG is chiefly devoted to housing.
That's the way we do it here.
Renovations, repairs, and that the city's use of general funds addresses other needs such as food insecurity, store-to-door, for instance, the shopping service for seniors.
All right. Well, why don't we get that additional information from staff, and you can see pros and cons of each method, either the annual that we've been doing or the biennial approach.
Can do.
All right.
We have a survey that's under development right now that we're using to gather information about for the parks master planning process. Ron Vine is the gentleman who's helping us with that. It's, as I say, it's undergoing review and development right now, but very soon it's going to be in the field. We have tentatively identified the date of Monday, October 20th, as a time when we'd like to see if we could get council and park board together to have a joint presentation from the survey team to explain their methodology and the results. And that is a Monday evening. October 21st is tentatively the night that is scheduled for you to receive the final recommendations from the Schoenbauers on the Fred Richards repurposing project. So there is some timeline issues here that we think work well for that.
So you're thinking Monday evening, the 20th?
I am. We don't have a time yet, or a time or location yet, but I wanted to at least try to get that date onto your calendars.
Okay.
The consultant will have already had that data well before.
Oh, yeah.
Just for public information.
Right.
That date works for me. I know that because the police department asked me would I go meet with a neighborhood group on October 13th or the 20th, and Deb checked our schedule.
Well,
both nights were open, and I said the 13th, so I know the 20th is open.
We will more later on location and exact time, but I just want to get that to you as early as possible.
Are we talking late afternoon or evening, or you don't know?
Probably I would say a later afternoon, I think.
5 o'clock or something?
Yeah, something like that. Earlier this evening, Mr. Lorenz brought up the Operation Starburst recognitions, and we have recognized those two officers previously, Dave Lindman and Joel Moore, who did outstanding work in that.
That was last year?
It was it might even been the year before. That process that operation has been ongoing for a long time. Now, what's recently come into the news now is the fact that the prosecutions have taken place and even some of the verdicts have been issued. Yeah. And I believe that's all I have. Oh, excuse me, except for at the last meeting, we had a discussion about conflicts of interest and whether or not the city should have its own conflict of interest policy. We've had some level of policy, but largely we have depended on state statute, and there's a strong state statute in Minnesota about conflict of interest for local officials. The proposal that Councilmember Sprague made at the last meeting was, should we go further than that? And you could make an argument for why you should go further than that, but I can tell you that there's also risk in going further than that. And the city attorney and I have had a chance to talk about that, and we can talk about that tonight with you as well. We have used as a basis for the proposed conflict of interest policy, the Brainerd policy, the one that Councilmember Sprague brought to the table or suggested at our last meeting. So also attached to the council packet was just some additional information about conflicts from the League of Minnesota Cities handbook, and I'm looking for some direction from you on how you'd like to proceed with this policy.
Is the state statute embodied in here somewhere as well, in this packet?
City attorney should probably answer that question.
It's referred to, but I didn't see it in there.
I don't think we did.
It's in chapter 471. I have it.
The impetus for the policy is the Planning Commission has been talking about adopting it for their board for some time, and they looked at the Brainerd policy, and I thought it made more sense to have a citywide policy that applies to all boards and commissions.
I think it does. Yep.
But I realize that it's a mosaic of state statutory provisions and case law, and so we'll never be able to give a full representation of the entire body of law. but could there be some way to encapsulate the major points into a policy and or have a statement?
Member Bennett?
After preliminary review, I have a couple of requests, and one is that I think we should take public comment, not have a public hearing on it, but I think definitely we should take some public comment before we adopt something that would apply to the council and all boards and commissions.
absolutely.
So in that way, well, one of the questions was, would we want to take action this evening? And
I don't think
Yeah, no,
action was
I don't
in
think
the, that we would vote on anything.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not in a form to vote
So,
on
so
it.
that is one request, and I think the planning commission, I do like the idea of something uniform. Manager Neal, I recall one of the blogs that you wrote that said that state law gets a C+ or a D.
From an independent agency that was reviewing, or interest group, I'd say, that was reviewing state statutes and conflict of interest across the country. Yep.
And back in 2008, my second year on the council, I attended the League of Minnesota Cities sponsored workshop for experienced officials, I think they titled it, and that was on ethics that year.
Yeah,
And
I went to that one,
my
too, yeah.
big takeaway was that that state law on ethics is the floor, not the ceiling. And so one of my big questions is, how does this exceed that C+, C-, D Minnesota law? And even if it's a mosaic of state statute and case law, that still limits it pretty much to what the law does, which doesn't get high marks. So those are my base, my kind of base or.
But we're a creature of the state, so can we exceed?
Absolutely we can. Absolutely we can.
We have to be in compliance with state law, but we can go beyond it.
That's
Yeah.
the state law is the floor, not the ceiling.
Right.
And we can, I mean, part of what I appreciated in the draft that's in front of us is the explanation that it gave for the desirability of an ethics policy and also the consistency that there be a policy that applies to all people serving in this public capacity, whether they're elected or appointed. I appreciated that very much. And again, I'm just looking for something that that maybe we have consensus on that takes us beyond what is adjudged to be a fairly minimal state law.
To me, this seems like it's something destined for a work session.
Yeah,
I'd like
that's just where I was going.
Okay.
This sounds like a work session topic to me.
I'd like to.
But maybe
I'd like to see the state statute. I'd like to look at some cases. I'd like to look at this, and I can't do that tonight. And I think we need to have a work session on it. And Roger,
But I think what Member Sprague brought up is that maybe before Planning Commission moves farther on what they're doing, and because it seems what I hear from all of us is that we want something consistent from the council through our boards and commissions, that maybe it would be good to let planning know just to hold up and that we are going to work on this.
ask them not to act independently, that we will take this up as a council matter.
Would that be okay?
Yes, we'll take care of that.
Roger?
Before attempting to write anything, I think we need direction on what it is. I mean, I can give you the state statute, which just covers purchases, but there are all sorts of different types of conflicts and different situations. There are Attorney General's opinions on it, there are case law on it, and it's quite a volume of stuff.
I think
there's some of it here.
What we would benefit from relative to you would be all those years of experience. And so when we do a work session, give us the state statute and give us anything that you think would be relevant that we should be thinking about from a conduct standpoint.
Absolutely.
Or a conflict standpoint. And then we can incorporate all that material, study it, and then have a discussion about it at the council level, and then decide what to do about it.
I certainly can put together a package.
Thank you.
I think we want objective standards, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that one threshold question would be, do we want to go beyond what the state law is? I don't know the answer to that either.
And then one of the interesting things is if you do, and someone violates that, whatever you call it, policy, what are the consequences?
And who enforces?
What are the enforceable consequences of that?
I
All right.
I don't think we're looking so much for legal liability or prosecution.
No.
It's just to guide.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that the draft, again, that is in front of us, that Member Sprague and Manager Neal have worked on, the emphasis on public trust in the decision-making process and the decisions that are reached. I think those are really important objectives. I would also like to know for a work session why that independent expert or evaluator judged Minnesota law so deficient.
I think the most important thing for me, obviously, other than us, and we have you here all the time, if we have a question at all about whether we should recuse ourselves at all, but not every board or commission has that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, maybe we're looking for two things, I'm hoping not, but I really think it has to be very clear, and there isn't any nebulous, well, if you think you're doing it, you're doing, if there's a monetary reason, if there's this reason, if you're on a board and you make these, those are more of what I'm looking for.
I thought Brainerd had some pretty good objective standards in it, and gave some good guidance that talks about being on nonprofit boards and what you do there. I mean, that's specific, clear, objective guidance that I think needs to guide the policy development.
Unfortunately, in this, there are lots of shades of gray where you can't. I wish you could not.
I think I'm logical enough. Well, I've been married to a lawyer and a judge too long to know that you can't write something that's going to cover everything. I get that. Nor would I even attempt that, because it would be way too many pages and no one would ever read it and it wouldn't become a usable document. What I really am looking for, I think personally, is a usable document.
Some kind of more or less bullet points with broad topics.
Yes.
Broad statements.
With prefatory language, like in Brainerd, about the value of ethics in public service.
So, as I understand, I'm to get you a packet of the state law and stuff and that sort of thing, but we're not to prepare anything.
Right.
And we go to the work
Correct.
session and we start from there.
Right. Correct. And that work session might be into the future a little bit because we've got you booked up for a while.
I know you do.
Okay.
All right.
But
in
this was
the
a
meantime,
good-
we'll rely on state law.
Very good.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong there.
And Roger.
All right. Anything further for the council agenda? Otherwise, we'll.
I do actually. With respect to the budget transfer on the consent agenda for the golf course operations, do you have any other historic numbers that can supplement our understanding?
I do, and thank you for raising that, Councilmember Sprague, because I did want to address that with council tonight. We did have a chance, as part of the consent agenda, to make the financial transfers, and really you have a chance to do that because the city has successfully managed a budget in the previous year, and it means that there were $2 million as a net balance left over from our budget. We spent just a little bit more than our budget, our original budget called for, and that was mainly because of an accounting shift in the way we handle a state revenue that comes to us. But really, we had an extraordinary amount of revenue primarily related to development, so that's where that balance comes from. One of the recommendations that was put to the council and that you agreed with earlier tonight was that of the little over $2 million of general fund, unreserved fund balance, we propose to you that we put a little over $1 million of that into our golf fund, and the purpose of that is that we need to make solid progress in bringing down the accumulated operating deficit in our golf fund, essentially so that we can prepare it to do additional debt financing in the future for anticipated improvement projects, not only on the golf course itself, but potentially in our buildings around the golf course and of course the driving range. So the $1.1 million that was approved tonight makes very good headway to that. But in addition to the $1.1 million of fund balance that we are pledging toward the golf fund, we also have a $500,000 transfer from our liquor stores. So all total in 2014, we plan to transfer a little over $1.6 million into our golf fund. And that is going to, we hope, bring our golf fund fairly close to even. Over the past years, in 2010, we pledged we transferred $100,000 to help cover that deficit. $100,000 in 2011, another $100,000 in 2012, $468,000 in 2013, and again $1.5 million. So in that 5-year period, we have really done quite a bit to cover that accumulated golf deficit of over the past decade, really. And it's in that 5-year period, it's $2.3 million. So that's a big number, but it helps cover that accumulated deficit and hopefully set our golf fund up for a period in which we're going to be successfully able to borrow new money so that we can do improvements to drive more revenue at our golf course. And that is the idea that we have, that we hope will bring the operating deficit on an annual basis down to zero, which is the way it has been.
But in the
historically.
meantime, I'm going to assume that this transfer is a good thing from our bond rating perspective, because when we went out and got our AAA given to us again about a month and a half ago, one of the comments for deficits or things that they were concerned about was, again, our golf course. So, Manager Neal, do you feel like this transfer enhances our ability to stabilize make sure our bond rating is stable?
I do, and because it's meaningful to the folks that rate our credit. When they look at our credit and they look at our financial activities and they see a large annual operating deficit in our golf fund year after year after year, they want to know that they make a judgment about our stewardship, really, of our financial resources. And when they see nothing happening with that deficit, that it just grows from year to year, they make a judgment about us. But when they see us trying to make improvements at the golf course, when they see the amount of attention that we pay to it from a fiscal standpoint, when they see us transferring money into that golf fund to bring that operating deficit down, they also make a judgment about our stewardship and a positive one at that. So this is going to be perceived positively not only by the credit rating agencies, but does set us up to make more improvements at the golf course in the future.
Good.
Just as a footnote to that, because I remember during the Fred hearings, I got some information from Eric. And in 2008 and 2009, there was an additional $440,000 in cash transfers. So the real total should be more like 2.8 since 2008 million.
In fairness to the golf operations, can you discern what portion of those transfers over the last 5 years or the period mentioned by Member Sprague related to capital debt reduction on the borrowing that took place to both fund Fred Richards and the third nine at the golf course, as opposed to funding operational deficiencies or shortfalls?
The golf fund carried a debt service requirement, I believe, until 2013, probably, or January of 2013. Mm-hmm. And that debt was retired that year. Is that?
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor? Okay.
The debt, the money that was borrowed to pay off Fred Richards.
Right.
The bonds were paid off in 2013 that funded both Fred Richards and the third nine.
Right.
So we know that 2013 was a terrible year weather-wise, and that was probably primarily an operational underwriting of that $470,000. But over that 5-year period, that look-back period, I'm assuming that a portion of that involved the golf course breaking even or coming close to breaking even on golf operations, but that they were unable to pay their proportional share of they were unable to make the payments on the capital debt.
I don't think that's true, because I can send you the spreadsheet. I have operational losses for the golf enterprise, $100,000 in 2010.
Yeah, Yeah, that's
$100,000 in 11, $60,000 in 12, $450,000 or so in 13, and so on. And below the line, it says, it tells you, it breaks out how much of that includes depreciation, and then it says cash items not included in operating income above, and it says debt service. So that excludes debt service.
Yep, so the numbers that you're coming up with are far short of the 2.3 million because they're operational numbers. You said 100, 60, 100. So operationally they were deficient. They weren't making money.
My numbers include, not my numbers, sorry, the city's finance department numbers are total cash transfers for CIP items and operational deficiencies. If it's not covering its operations, it can't cover its capital improvements. So it needs more subsidy. So that number only covers the items I just mentioned, CIP and operations. It doesn't cover. If you added debt service into the losses, it would be even higher.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either. I just don't have access to that that level of data.
But there's a there's a spreadsheet
get an update
that you
on
can
that
look at.
instead of discussing what we don't know.
Nobody's trying to minimize the amount of money involved because it is significant, and we're trying to right the ship there, just like we did over at Edinburgh Park.
We are. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And
we have an HRA agenda?
we do. We got to adjourn the council meeting. Oh, one other thing, council related. We had three folks tonight, Christian Clapp, Susan Ora, and Drew Beeson, that had concerns about Pamela Park, particularly related to the artificial turf. And I'm wondering if you could ask Director Catry to address that issue for the council. There are concerns about health, potential heat-related issues, toxins in the material. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the Viking issue. You know, is it really related to the product, or is there some other kind of dispute going on? That would be good to know.
Okay.
All right.
She's met with them, so we can inform the council.
All right. Any other business for the council? Council meeting stands adjourned. And calling to order the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Mangan.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Brindle.
Here.
Commissioner Sprague.
Here.
Commissioner Swenson.
Here.
Chair Hovland.
Here. We've got a form of meeting agenda. We have a motion to approve it.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second to approve the form of meeting agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Minutes of the HRA August 4th. Is there?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Got a motion and second to approve the HRA minutes of August 4, 2014. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
I'll move the request for purchase of engineering 14-15 France Avenue lighting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Carried. We have tonight a special presentation, an update on Pentagon Park, and we have Scott Tankenoff with us. I see him. He came in earlier, patiently sitting in the back of the council chambers, and
he was sitting in a boat in Brainerd earlier today, and he
was reviewing the Brainerd conflicts of interest.
I'm sure he was.
Oh, if I knew that, I would have gotten a ride from you down here, because I drove down here at about 10 from that area.
Mr. Tankenoff, you're well familiar with. He wanted to provide you a brief update on the status of the Pentagon Park development, and I think that would be good for us to know. Mr. Tankenoff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I do want to provide you with a brief update on the redevelopment activities at Pentagon Park. It's been approximately 90 days since we were together, and we've been working on a number of things, including demolition planning for the South Tower and related buildings, planning for marketing of the redeveloped Pentagon Park area, and continuing to provide good quality services at our 5 stabilized buildings, which are directly north of 77th. I'd like to talk about demolition planning work to start with. We are anticipating applying for a demolition permit and to request that permit from the city within the next 7 to 10 days for the South Pentagon Park buildings, which will include the Tower building, the 4 wing buildings, the 7710 Computer Avenue building, So basically, everything that's on the south parcel that we own, we do not own the car wash, but it does not include the Cradle Club building, which is at 4815 West 77th. That building will be slated for demolition at a later time. Cradle Club is an important member of our tenant community and of the Edina community. We are working to find a long-term solution for them to be located within Pentagon Park. So we're going to leave them in place. They're well aware of that. We still retain all of our rights to terminate that lease, to change our relationship if need be. The time is not to do that now. The time is to get the south tower down and the other buildings down and to get that site prepped for demolition. Along with demolition planning, we've been planning on how are we going to remove the lead-based paint and the asbestos from the buildings. Those need to be abated first, and that work will likely commence right around Labor Day, because after Labor Day, all the schools are open, which means all the asbestos and lead-based paint abaters are now all of a sudden willing to answer their phone, looking for work, and happy to go to a commercial building and leave a school building. We think the demolition is likely to start on the South Tower buildings that I mentioned in late October to early November. There's a little bit of movement in that schedule. And one thing that we are going to be doing is we are going to be holding a demolition event. I don't know that there's ever been a demolition event in Edina, but we're going to plan one. And I think that this is an important function for not only for us, I think for everybody within the city staff, within that is an elected official, a volunteer official that's on a committee, anyone who's been involved with this project, touched this project, come as a neighbor to get involved with this project. This is an important step. So there will be a ceremony, there will be an event, and it is intended to be a start of a transition, the next chapter in the transition. So we'll keep you up to speed on that. We'll be planning that and getting staff involved with that. But that's something that we'd like to host and should be a fun event.
Don't forget, Member Brindle knows how to run one of those cranes with a big steel ball in the end.
I was not aware of that.
Montessori, yeah.
If only we could have a button pushing instead, but that's not going to happen.
And you're
Well, you
the
know,
one,
I've seen it when they've done the implosion thing, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Well, again, if only we could do that, but we will be.
We're going to just chew it one little.
It will get dealt with another way, yes. So one other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be providing a website which will have some general demolition information, including updates and some schedules on it, which again I think will be helpful not only for in general for the public, for city staff, but for interested neighbors, people that just want to know what's going on. We have a number of people that, from our tenants to just the public, are going to want to know what's going on. I think that's an important step, and there will be a link that people can ask questions, and there will be people from our company that will monitor those, and we will give responses to them. So it's like anything. If someone were to call our company and say, we have a question about this, we have a question about this building, this practice, why are you mowing your lawn this way, what's going on, we're going to address that question directly with them. I think the idea is that a lot of times there are questions that seem to come to the city, and then the city has to say, where does this go to? Who do I talk to? Do I talk to the developer? Do I talk to the managing group for the developer? We're trying to get information kind of out into the public in the right way and also make it so it's interactive. So that's another thing that we're working on and planning. One other thing we're going to be doing, a lot of one other things here, is we will be looking to track the following volumes from the demolition activities. We started getting excited about thinking, what happens in demolition, and what do you track, and what do you do, and what this really comes back to is what can you avoid putting in a landfill? And we do not demolish a lot of buildings, so for me this is actually interesting because I typically go out and save a building. So how do you keep that stuff out of a landfill, which is just not good policy to put everything in a landfill or as much as goes into a landfill? So these are the things that we're looking at tracking at this point. Hazardous materials such as asbestos, things that are abated, those are going to go into a landfill. There's no other place you can really put that, but we're going to track that volume. We're going to track recycled materials that go off-site. That could be metal, as an example, any form of metal or steel that gets recycled, that goes to another job site that maybe gets melted down or gets scrapped. That's something that we will track. We're going to, again, look at that by volume. Recycled materials that stay on-site. That's also important. And again, another example that would be concrete materials. That concrete will get crushed up and that will get used whether as road base, as building base. There's a whole variety of uses on site. That using that product on site obviously means it's not going in a truck. There's not fuel to take it off site. It's not getting out of the road system. It's not harming the road system or creating more dust. There's a lot of advantages to keeping what you can for reuse on site. So those are some things we're looking at tracking. Here's another one thing. The fire department is excited, and they're excited in a really good way. They are going to be able, before we demolish the 6-story building, we are going to work with them on scheduling so that they can go in and practice. And now that sounds...
they don't get practice in a 6-story building very often, you're right.
That's correct. That's exactly correct, Councilmember Swenson. They do not get practice. The neighboring cities and municipalities do not get to practice. They are so excited to be able to get in this building and practice, whether it's with theatrical smoke, real fire, whatever it would be. So that's been a kind of a treat to see those guys get excited about what's going to happen, not only for the future, but also what can we do in the current time. And it's not just the fire department, I believe. Police, SWAT, a variety of other emergency responders are going to be able to go in and practice. One additional thing that we're thinking about doing is, because we have so many blighted buildings, now they're only 3-story buildings, but in the future I think we can provide, it won't be a permanent training facility for them, but I think we can provide them with an additional training facility that's to the north of 77th, which I think will be a nice advantage for them other than just relying on your tower at Braemar. So it's not just about what can we do today, it's what can we do in the future. That is a huge benefit, I think, for us, for anyone that's in this community, as any sort of a neighbor or resident or commercial neighbor. Anything you can do to have a more trained and more honed force that's protecting you, that's great. So we're excited about that. Your fire department, all of them were really excited, and that was fun to see. That was really, really fun to see. So we're just getting the finishing touches on some logistics for that, and then that's going to happen. So that takes care of kind of demolition updates. So there's been a lot of activity and a lot of planning, and the reason there's been so much planning and so much focus from my update on what is demolition, it's really our first step. And that first step, it's really important. For me, it's important for all of you, the community, that this be handled well. It go about in the best possible practice. It needs to go smoothly. We want it to go smoothly. We want it to be the best possible project it can be. Being able to demolish these buildings now is important because it gives us a major head start on not only marketing, because a lot of people out there think this is never going to happen. There's still people in the office community, in the general community, that think, those buildings will be there forever, and that's not the case. So being able to show progress, being able to demonstrate progress, being able to then shrink a construction schedule maybe by 3 to 4 months is a very, very major accomplishment. So that's part of why this is important. And also, you don't have a lot of demolition going on in your community, let alone of this scale and magnitude. So we want to be sure everything's lined up. And as a matter of fact, we'll be at the Watershed District tomorrow night to be talking with them. I think we're on their agenda, I think in the beginning, to request permitting. So it continues along. 2 additional things other than demolition. Marketing. We anticipate that there will be a major marketing effort for Pentagon Park, the repurposed Pentagon Park, that will start in September or October of this year. There's a lot more to follow at that time. So
all those questions about what will then get built there will be later, because that will be what we're going to be asked a number of things. Well, you're tearing it down. What have you approved? I haven't heard of anything. So, obviously, we know you haven't come to us, but so you're anticipating sometime in the next year.
That's correct. What we anticipate doing is starting our marketing efforts in earnest, hit the ground running with that, and then be in a position to come back and provide updates not only on a quarterly basis to you and, if need be, to the Planning Commission, but also to start providing with staff, where are we going, what do we see that's going to happen, what do we see for the initial mix of buildings. We believe we're focused toward the south area. The ability to get these buildings demolished now is important, but we do not have buildings to replace them. There's been no design. We have not retained an architect, an engineer, anyone additionally. It's been 90 days. So what we really are focused on Let's get those buildings taken down. Let's get the few tenants that are in those buildings safely and calmly and carefully out of the way, candidly, to the north buildings that we have, retain those jobs, and start the process and start it right. And we've been so focused on being able to get our plans together and get through the initial steps of the initial PUD, the initial TIF project that we have, the redevelopment agreement. We needed a pause. We needed not a break to stop momentum, but we needed to recalibrate, because the next real part of this effort started already about 60 days ago, and there's a lot of work and a lot of planning. So no, there are no definitive plans of what any buildings will look like, what uses will be. Everything that we will do will be still consistent with everything that has come before, everything that's been approved, the densities, the heights, the uses.
Sure.
I believe this is all consistent. We're well on our way. And the plans of what we all did over the last 12 to 15 months, all that effort, all that work is going to result in a good event and a good result, but what it will specifically be, you'll see that as it starts to come forward through staff, through Plan Commission, through sketch plan with you, and then back through the formalized process.
And then I'm going to assume as a city that we will put out an extra or some sort of notice that we're going to be doing fire or police training, so that the residents that might look across at that or live at Burgundy Place aren't all of a sudden wondering what's happening, like the people in downtown St. Paul and Minneapolis last night when the 5 black helicopters or whatever it was started doing whatever training they were doing that they forgot to announce they were doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have one more final thing, which are grant applications. We have currently a deed redevelopment account grant application that is in. We should hear about that within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're optimistic about that. We've gotten some questions back from deed, which is routine, and we'll be responding to them, I believe, by the end of this week with some of the questions that they had. Other than that, there's additional asbestos abatement that will take place to the north of 77th, not in the stabilized buildings, but in the other buildings that are going to come down at some point. And that asbestos abatement will likely happen later into this fall. So there's still some grant funds that are left and still some asbestos that we'll take out of those buildings. That also will aid us in being able to provide a more permanent training facility in a 3-story building for fire, as well as the police department or anyone else. So lots of additional activity still going on, but focus is now on what can we do with this land? How do we make it into something great? We're off to a good start.
Exciting.
Great. Wonderful report. Questions for Mr. Tankenoff? Comments from council? Thanks for coming out this evening.
Sure. Thank you.
Member Bennett?
I was very impressed by your description of tracking the different materials. You may look to McAllister College when it dismantled its gym and field house. Some parts of the building, I think, dated back to the 1920s. Actually, the old field house became a horse barn out in Hamel, and they did prepare a video that showed their final result and disposition of things. And this sounds much in the same vein, and I applaud it.
Thank you. One additional comment. There will be a significant amount of video, of pictures. We are going to photo document this, and actually that's something that Bill Noondorf and Carrie Teague and I have talked a little bit about, is how do we photo document what's here? How do we do video? How do we memorialize not only what we're trying to do, but what has happened along the process? So I would anticipate there'll be quite a bit of volume that will happen, and we'll be working with your communications department on that, as well as on this event that we're going to have for demolition.
Cool.
So
good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other business for the HRA? We stand adjourned.
Ooh, were we a little bit off the time?